eastern side of the Bighorn Mountains are, in my view, one of the most beautiful areas in Wyoming. The area is also the site of some of the most bloody fighting in the American Indian Wars. In the last quarter of the 19th century, the United States Army built 2 forts in the area. What was the purpose of these forts, and what is their function now? In 1878, the Army established Fort McKinney, and in 1898, Fort McKenzie was established. Fort McKinney started as Containment Reno in 1876. It was established a few miles south of Old Fort Reno on bluffs above the Powder River. It served as a supply base for General Crook's forces as they marched north into the Powder River area in the Great Sioux War of 1876. By 1877, the post was renamed Fort McKinney because of serious shortages of wood, forage, and water. The fort was moved 45 miles north to Clear Creek.
Hi, Wyoming Traveler, and I am at Fort McKinney, which is currently the Wyoming Veterans Home. And we're going to do a brief tour of it because there's not a whole lot of Fort McKinney left.
By the time Fort McKinney was established, the Plains Indian Wars had come to an end. The Cheyenne and Sioux bands who lived and hunted in the Powder River country were moved onto reservations in modern-day South Dakota. The mission of the garrison changed from fighting Indians to keeping Arapaho, Crow, and Shoshone, who had reservations in the area, from fighting and raiding each other. Later, the troops were needed to build and maintain telegraph lines in the region, protect incoming settlers, and guard the Rock Creek stage line. The fort served as the home for several companies of the 9th Cavalry, called Buffalo Soldiers. The 9th was one of the 4 black regiments in the U.S. Army. On April 13, 1862, the garrison was involved in the Johnson County War. On that day, units were ordered by President Benjamin Harrison to take into custody about 40 Texas gunmen who were surrounded by angry homesteaders and small ranchers. The gunmen had been hired by the Wyoming cattle barons to drive out or kill the homesteaders and small ranchers in the area. The gunslingers were taken to the fort for protection. After the gunmen's rescue, a group of local cowboys set fire to the post exchange and planted a bomb in a barrack stove. 1 soldier was injured. In 1894, the post was closed. Some of the buildings were sold, while others, as well as the land, was turned over to the state of Wyoming. The remaining buildings were altered or dismantled.
There are only 3 of the original fort buildings that remain here at Fort McKinney. 2 of them, they don't know what they are, but this one, they do know that it was the Fort Hospital. Today it is the administration building for the Veterans Home and some other Wyoming government offices. This is a view of the front of what would have been the hospital. These are 2 of the remaining buildings at Fort McKinney. They are believed to be part of the original fort. Unfortunately, nobody has any idea of what these buildings were originally used for.
I left Fort McKinney and headed up the highway to Sheridan, Wyoming, and Fort McKenzie.
Today, Fort McKenzie is a veterans hospital.
Because of virus issues, I was unable to visit the fort and take pictures. Fort McKenzie was established in 1898. The fort was a pork barrel project originated by the Wyoming congressional delegation and had no military requirements. The fort was established 8 years after the last battle between the U.S. Army and hostile Indians, several years after the nearby forts in northern Wyoming and southern Montana were abandoned, and 20 years after the hostile tribes were removed from the Powder River country. The fort, however, was expanded. The garrison eventually numbered 600 men, including 2 companies of the 10th Cavalry, another black regiment. The fort remained open until 1913, when the troops were transferred elsewhere and only a few caretakers remained. Fort McKenzie's usefulness as a military post ended with the entry of the United States in World War I. The post was officially abandoned on November 3, 1918. The fort was transferred from the War Department to the Public Health Service in 1921, and a year later it was transferred to the Veterans Bureau. The significance of Fort McKenzie as a historic site derives from its history and its architecture. It served as a military post, however limited, and as a veterans hospital. The dozens of red brick colonial-style buildings form an impressive complex that is similar to F.E. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne and Fort Yellowstone at Mammoth, Wyoming. Today, the 48 remaining fort buildings serve as residence and administrative and support offices for the Veterans Hospital.